All right, Alex, welcome to the podcast. How you doing, man?
Doing great. Thanks a lot for the opportunity to be here. Nice to meet you, Brandon.
It's nice to meet you as well. Happy to have you on. Tell me a little bit about yourself to kind of kick this off and get it started. I'm very curious what your story's like. How did you get into this space? How did you get into crypto and blockchain? Yeah, give me a little bit of your background.
Yeah, sure. So, by the way, that question is like my favorite question. That the answer to that question is my favorite thing about this industry is it brings together people from a incredibly wide array of backgrounds, and it's one of my favorite parts about being part of the industry. Like I said, to answer your question though, as for my background, I guess you could say I kind of came to crypto from a non-traditional path. The first 10 years of my career, I was a soldier in the U.S. Army. So I come from a military family, and I was in high school when the 9/11 attacks happened, and felt like I was kind of called to serve, and so I joined the Army, and I ended up commissioning in 2008 as an infantry officer, and I spent time in Afghanistan, and then later went into special forces, and was in other parts of the Middle East, and specifically my last deployment was working in Turkey with the Syrian rebels, and we were training them to fight the regime and ISIS at the time. And that's actually, you're like, where is this going? But that's actually how I got into crypto. So I learned about crypto from Turkey. You probably know Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies are very popular there, and I learned about it initially from a Turk. And as we were working kind of in and around a lot of these refugee camps, I heard story after story from people who had fled the Civil War and ended up losing access to their wealth because as most people probably know, but I didn't at the time, is like when you cross a border, accessing the money in your bank account becomes a little bit more difficult. I mean, not if you're an American, but if you're a Syrian and you're in Turkey or you're in Jordan, it certainly does. So
I've had
many
that
of these
problem
people,
too.
yeah. So I mean, it's like it's just kind of the nature of the global financial system. At the time, I'd never thought about it before. But this idea that Bitcoin, specifically Bitcoin, represented this store of value or in some sense your wealth that you could port in your head by memorizing a private key or a mnemonic phrase that you could allow you to regenerate your key, whatever it may be, like that, and you could walk anywhere in the world like with your wealth kind of there, like was really incredible to me. Because again, these people who I was talking to, many of them were from the upper classes of Syrian society, doctors, dentists, etc. And one day they found themselves on just the wrong side of the front line, and they had to make this choice for their lives. But after the fact, they ended up being effectively impoverished, right? And so I kind of viewed that as a tragedy, and learning about Bitcoin and thinking about it in that environment, and also reflecting upon kind of some of the other conditions that I witnessed in the Middle East, like rampant corruption, for example, or in the case of Afghanistan, there just simply was no system to keep track of things like property. Like it just struck me that this was a technology that had such powerful potential applications. And so I left the military after about 10 years. I got out in 2017, and I was like, how do I get into this space? Initially, I tried, I thought about doing a degree in computer science, but the schools that I would have been qualified for computer science, didn't really have great communities of people who were in the space. So I ended up applying to business school. Was fortunate to get into Stanford University, and I was helped start the Stanford Blockchain Club, and then just kind of got more and more into it, both from taking courses, both in the computer science department and kind of other departments that were stuff I considered relevant. That's how I sort of started educating myself about the space at a technical level. And then also I just looked for opportunities to get into it. And I kind of caught a lucky break timing wise. It was 2017. I just started in the fall, and you probably remember 2017 was kind of the ICO, the heyday of ICOs. And Stanford happens to be just down the road from a lot of venture capital firms. And one day they sent an email out on our listserv or whatever saying, hey, we're looking for an analyst. And I applied, with zero work experience outside of the Army, thinking I was like, there's no way I'm going to get this job at this one firm, as particularly it was GGB Capital was this firm that sent the email. And I'm like, there's no way I'm getting this job, but I'll just throw my hat into the ring because I was really interested in the space. And sure enough, I ended up getting interviewed and ended up getting the job. And I worked for them part-time for my first year at Stanford. Through them, met some folks at Coinbase, where I ended up being actually the first intern on their new corporate development team for the summer between my first and second year, and kind of came back to Stanford that second year. He was running the Stanford Blockchain Club, like I said, and was planning on returning to Coinbase when I got, I was taking this cryptography class at the time, and the professor, who's a pretty famous cryptographer, his name is Dan Bonnet. He's the inventor of BLS signatures, among other things. Anyway, I was the only business student in his class, and he emails me before class one day. He's like, "Hey, Alex, I need to talk to you." And I was thinking to myself, oh man, I've definitely failed out of this course because I'm just a fish out of water, And much to my surprise, he was like, "Hey, I advise a venture capital firm. Would you be open to an intro? They're looking for an analyst." And it turned out to be Andreessen Horowitz. And so through him, I got connected to the team at Andreessen Horowitz, and in particular, Katie Hahn, who had relatively recently joined as a general partner, and kind of hit it off and ended up getting offered a role as deal partner, which I started. So I was a deal partner on the A16Z crypto team, starting just before I graduated Stanford in 2019, all the way until last year, actually almost exactly a year ago, when I got excited about Aleo and kind of the vision there, and decided to leave the world of investing and be at a startup. And so I joined Aleo, and like I said, about a year ago, I started as the chief strategy officer, and I'm the chief operating officer. So that's my story.
Yeah, that's a cool backstory. I actually have a couple questions just on your backstory. But yeah, back in your military days, I guess, do you think it was mostly the need for financial accessibility for a lot of those people that really piqued your interest, I guess? Because Bitcoin definitely helps solve that problem in a lot of different ways. And people look to crypto for that in a lot of different places. And I've noticed it even here in Latin America with Venezuelans that have been displaced and them going to crypto and Bitcoin to try and find ways to move their money around. So I've definitely seen it a lot.
Yeah, no, that was like the first kind of motivation. I guess the thing that really struck me as powerful, because in the special operations unit that I was part of, which is special forces, Army Special Forces, colloquially the Green Berets. The idea, the motto is like "De oppresso libere," which is free the oppressed. And so the idea of liberty is like, and the whole mission is like you're training people to like help themselves, basically. And so it's like it very much aligned with that philosophy, this idea of really you're enabling people, you're empowering people with their own financial liberty. And that caught on. And I think it is very applicable, not only in the Middle East, but as you pointed out, in Latin America, and a lot of places where, I think it's easy to forget, in the US or in Western Europe or in places that are pretty developed, it's easy to forget that for most people, most of the time in human history, like there's not a centralized party that you can rely on, right? Oftentimes they're malicious or maybe ignorant of you and don't care about your interests, right? So it's kind of a unique moment that we exist in history. But I think a lot of people, specifically in the third world, who haven't grown up or haven't witnessed or experienced that kind of trustworthy central party, get it intuitively. And so that's how I got into it.
When you were at Stanford, did you notice any desire from students or faculty or professors in regards to crypto or blockchain? Like, was it at all like a conversation topic at the time? I know it is on a lot of college campuses today, and it kind of was when I was in college. I'm curious, like, going to Stanford and that being such a very good school, was that ever like a topic?
Yeah, I mean, I have to say it ebbed and flowed. I mean, in 2017, everybody was into it, right? I was running the club.
Yeah.
I was running the blockchain club, and there would be like 400 people showing up to these events. And then, fast forward to 2019, and we had like Justin Drake from the Ethereum Foundation showed up, and I think 2 people came, which is like crazy. So it ebbed and flowed, but I have to say, like, I think, it's still in Silicon Valley. There were a lot of people, but not only students, but also faculty who were interested in the space. And like I said, the professor that I referenced, Dan Bonnet, he'd been involved in the space for quite a while. And so, yeah, I would say it ebbed and flowed, but there was a healthy enough amount of interest to keep me busy, certainly running the blockchain club and being a student.
Yeah, I remember I was a science major. I remember there being these speaker series that we had to go to at least once a week on like Wednesdays, and they'd bring in all these different tech guys or whatnot, and they would talk about something for like an hour, and we'd have to sit there and take notes. Most people didn't want to go, never showed up, and a huge auditorium, maybe there was like 20, 30 people across the campus. And then I remember one time they brought someone in that was doing something within blockchain. I don't remember who it was. I don't remember what the company was, but that auditorium was packed all the way out the door. It's good and cool though, but it's funny because they don't offer any kind of courses or anything on blockchain or any tracks to get into the industry, yet there's so much student interest. It's just kind of funny.
Yeah, it's interesting too because I've noticed it's kind of polarizing among people in computer science and people with a computer security background. Like some people just really don't like it at all. They kind of maybe it's like the financial aspect makes it feel a little bit strange. So there's a lot of very smart computer security and computer science experts that just do not touch it at all and kind of would excommunicate it if they could. But there's others that embrace it. And I think it just kind of depends. But I think, look, I mean, we can get more into this later, but I really think this technology enables these capabilities to trustlessly transfer or exchange assets between parties, or that I think that's a unique, without a trusted intermediary, and that's a unique capability that never existed before, and that can power a lot of primitives in the future of finance. So I think inevitably in 10 years time, there'll be plenty of courses on blockchain. I hope, at least.
The demand for it's there. It seems like every single year, demand for some type of developer within blockchain is like, in the top 3, like most needed jobs. So it's going to happen at some point. It's inevitable. But tell me more about, tell me about Aleo though.
Yeah, sure.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say on that last note, I mean, speaking is now at a startup where we're constantly trying to hire engineers with blockchain experience. Yeah, the demand is definitely there. And, of course, I saw this across the board when I was.
Is it hard to find engineers that have that experience?
I think yes, it is. Because, I mean, look, it's like, at most, Satoshi would have at most 11 years of blockchain experience, right? So it's just not that old of a space. And of course, Satoshi was probably like one of the few people who was into it, in his kind of small cohort of people. For the first 2 or 3 years, they were kind of the only people. And then, really, I think since Ethereum, the launch of Ethereum in 2016 and 2017, I think more and more people started coming to space. But yeah, if you compare it to like the world of JavaScript developers, I mean, it's extremely hard to find people with that expertise. So, yeah.
Hopefully more of them crop up in the future. I imagine that is hard to source out. But no, tell me a little bit more about Aleo, what you guys are doing. Like, what is it and what's the goal?
Yeah, so maybe like a little bit of background. So, I was never technical before, like in the Army. I didn't have like a technical job. Like I said, I was a special forces officer. I studied international relations and Arabic in undergrad. But at Stanford, I was trying to educate myself more on kind of the more technical aspects of the space, and and particularly cryptography really interested me. And one of the areas of cryptography that is still up and coming, but I think is very, very exciting and relatively unknown outside of the crypto space, is this idea of zero knowledge cryptography, right? And what is zero knowledge cryptography? It's kind of this, it's this technique, it's a cryptographic technique wherein I can prove something to you. I can prove to you that something is true without revealing why it's true, right? And it's kind of simple to state, but it's got these really subtle and interesting, there's really subtle and interesting applications for something like that, right? Traditionally, there's sort of this, I think in the computer security world, or just in general in the world, there's this spectrum of like verifiability and privacy, right? So it's like, in order to verify the veracity of some information, you kind of by definition have to reveal the information itself, and you kind of, and so sort of the sliding scale of trade-off. But the cool thing about zero knowledge cryptography to me was that you could do both at the same time. Like you could verify the veracity of some information, or that some program evaluated correctly, without actually seeing how it worked. It's similar to listeners who might be familiar with other areas of cryptography. It's kind of like homomorphic encryption, where it lets you basically compute over encrypted data, but it's kind of a weaker form of it that's much more practical. So anyway, I was learning about all this stuff at Stanford, and I was like, wow, I can't believe no one knows about this. This is like amazing. And this is around the time Zcash was kind of coming out, where it just kind of launched Sapling, like their network upgrade. And so it's a little bit of interest in the crypto space, but outside of it, not a whole lot. So I was really fascinated by that, and I was really excited by that idea. And so at A16Z, I was kind of focused on that, at least partially. And when Aleo was founded by this gentleman, Howard Wu, who was a student under Alessandro Chiesa at the University of Berkeley, and Alessandro and Howard have both, contributed to the academic literature for zero knowledge cryptography. And I had met Howard at a conference years before, and he really impressed me. And again, I was really interested in these ideas. So that's what led me. I think the interest into zero knowledge cryptography is what led me to Aleo. Now, why Aleo specifically? So Aleo is stated simply, Aleo is a platform for private decentralized applications, right? And I think both of those words are very important. I think if you look at the history of cryptocurrencies, you kind of start like Bitcoin. I kind of consider this the dawn of the modern era. I mean, there were many attempts at digital currencies before Bitcoin. All of them had, were interesting in some ways, had problems that prevented them from taking off. Bitcoin was the first thing that really worked, right? But Bitcoin is neither really programmable, nor is it particularly private, right? Companies like Chainalysis can figure out who people are, and Bitcoin does have Bitcoin script, but it's not a particularly powerful language that allows you to express some interesting logic, right? And so Ethereum, if the advent of Ethereum was or the innovation of Ethereum was really that it extended Bitcoin along this programmability axis, right? It lets you do smart contracts that were Turing complete, right? It just lets you express much more complicated programs in a much more succinct fashion. And then on the other side, on the other axis, like the privacy, fixing kind of the privacy piece of Bitcoin is what Zcash was really focused on. But Zcash, at least at the time, and more or less still today, doesn't really have the power. It doesn't empower you to write smart contracts, right? So Aleo tries to kind of marry both of those things. It really extends Zcash and tries to give you a programming model that's closer to Ethereum. And the way that it does this is through this execution model, which is based on this research called ZEXE, the zero knowledge execution. And so that's that's the core of Aleo. That's what it's built around. So we have what does that include? So we have our own layer one blockchain, and that's for data availability, and that's just like Zcash or Ethereum. That's where these these transactions get stored, and you have miners that kind of verify these transactions and validate blocks, and so that's sort of the base layer. And then you have the second layer, which is kind of this execution model, which is our equivalent of the EVM. And we call it SNARK VM. SNARK stands for Succinct Non-Interactive Argument of Knowledge. It's kind of like a ZK. It's a flavor of zero knowledge proof. So that's sort of the second layer, is the execution environment where these smart contracts are run. And then above that, we have these developer tools. One of which is our language, our kind of specific open source language for writing programs that compile into the format that you need to kind of create zero knowledge proofs. That's like I said, it's called Leo. And then we have like some developer tools, an Explorer, a block explorer, a wallet, Studio, so it's all this stuff to kind of make it easy and intuitive for a developer coming from the world of the web, not even from the world of crypto, to go in and start kind of playing with this technology. And I think the last few bits are one of the things that really excite me, is because before now, you've really needed to be an expert in cryptography to even play around with creating zero knowledge proofs. And the goal for Leo and for Aleo broadly is to make this technology accessible to any developer. So anyway, that's Aleo, I guess I would say in a nutshell, but I think I took a long time describing it. So
yeah, no worries. So got it. So Aleo is like this holy matrimony between smart contracts and zero knowledge proofs, correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, got it. Is there any concern with, zero knowledge proofs or anything built with, ZK tags, ZK snarks, any of that stuff, potentially being made illegal in the US? I know it's been floated around a while, having these, blockchains that are, private or anonymous or that use ZK snarks in some kind of way might not be legal in the U.S. going forward if they pass certain bills. Is that any concern, or do you think it'd stop you guys at all or anyone in the industry from doing so?
Yeah, so I think the TLDR is, I actually think this is the perfect technology for a regulated financial system. And I'll get into that more in a minute, but let me just first say that, like, philosophically, I completely understand the desire to, let's say, prevent terrorists from raising money. I mean, remember, I was in the Army for 10 years fighting what we used to call the war on terrorism, right? Like ISIS and Al Qaeda and all these guys. Like, so I get it. Like, you don't want to build a technology and that enables groups like that to flourish, right?
Sure.
But I actually, like I said, I think this is something. Well, I guess on the other hand, right, you don't a fully transparent financial system, like is kind of what Bitcoin and Ethereum is really hard to imagine for most people most of the time. Like, if all of our bank accounts were on Ethereum, like Brandon, I could just go to the Ethereum, I could go to Etherscan and just like look up your net worth right now, right? Like, and that's something that a lot of people, I think if you put it to them that way, they're like, whoa, that's like really
it's a little creepy.
I don't like that. Yeah.
A little invasive.
And then, yeah, exactly. And then and of course, like, talk about businesses that are like negotiating contracts with each other. I mean, like, those details, of course, it's very important that those stay private for a variety of financial and legal reasons. So, like, you do kind of need some layer of privacy, right? And, now, yes, you could achieve this if you have some central system that's like managing permissions for who sees what. But then, of course, you don't really get the benefit of what blockchains have given us, which is like, it's a decentralized system in which different parties can interact trustlessly, and that ends up being cheaper in a lot of cases. So anyway, so you can marry the needs to have privacy from the other participants in the economy, but prove to regulators that, for example, you're not paying anyone on an OFAC list or like a blacklist, from OFAC, that you're paying your taxes, that you're doing. There's a variety of ways to demonstrate that you've complied, again, using the zero knowledge proofs, that like saying you follow the rules and cryptographically proving that you have without revealing how you followed them, right? Does that make sense? So I think it's in that way. So that's why I think it's perfect for regulators. And this is also, by the way, why central banks are studying this technology a lot for CBDCs, right? And MIT, I think, is kind of at the center of this. And MIT has a lot of folks that think and know and contribute a lot to the space of CK.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on the part that, privacy, confidentiality, that kind of stuff, needs to exist for many, many different reasons, and is important for government, important for corporations, small businesses, individuals, pretty much everyone, to a degree. So, but what kind of privacy blockchain-based applications are they building, specifically that they need or they want to use, that kind of helps, alleviate these issues or solves these problems?
I mean, I think one really great example of an application that needs privacy are decentralized exchanges.
Sure.
And why is that? I think like a decentralized exchange like Uniswap, which, by the way, I'm a huge fan of. So let me just state, I'm a huge fan of both Ethereum and Bitcoin, and everything I talk, like, I don't view, I guess this is maybe a good time to kind of state this disclaimer, I don't view Aleo as an Ethereum killer or as a Bitcoin killer or as an anything killer. I think Aleo has its own unique approach that makes it kind of useful for certain things. And I think I kind of really feel that way about every layer one. Every layer one, I think, kind of makes trade-offs in terms of, kind of technical trade-offs or philosophical trade-offs that make them maybe more suited to one application. Anyway, okay. But one of the things that privacy gets you that Aleo can enable, whereas Ethereum cannot, is there is no front running, right? In Ethereum, if I want to submit a transaction to Uniswap, everyone in the world gets a chance to have a say if they want to go before me, right? And this is, I mean, it's a major problem. I think that people don't really realize. It's kind of in the same vein that, you interact with a social media platform and you're really giving up your data and it's being taken advantage of at your expense. This is like even more explicit than that. Like, you're literally conveying information to the world that everyone else can profit from at your literal expense, right? Mm-hmm. So I think, look, and for people who are maybe trading on Uniswap in small amounts. Like reality is the MEV, minor extractable value, or front running is not a concern for them. But if you're trading in the amounts that like a traditional OTC desk trades, you're definitely not, you cannot do it on Uniswap. For number one, you're going to move markets too much. Number two, like I said, there's too much arbitrage profits to be made on your back, that you would risk it, right? This is why many of these traders like go directly to miners and basically sit, like the miners effectively end up being the bank in a bizarre way, right? But here in this case, in Aleo's case, every transaction looks like every other transaction. So a miner, the validator on the network, is just says, okay, well, who's giving me the highest fee? I have no idea what's inside the transaction, but I can order it based on fee, and so it's in some sense more fair. So that's one. I think that's one example. I think there's a lot of other examples, a lot related to identity. And there's been a lot of interesting work on Ethereum to enable credit scoring and being able to kind of like let people take out loans, maybe less than 100% collateral put up front. And I think identity is just a hard problem. And particularly on chain, you have to be comfortable with all of that identifying information being public and available to everyone forever, right? Again, it's just kind of like a little bit dystopian. So again, Aleo is potentially another way around that, where, the silly example that I like to give here is like, you go to a bar, you show your driver's license, the bartender, the bouncer looks, he's like, okay, are they over 21? But in the process of looking at your birthday, like they can read your address. They can see everything about you, like that's on your driver's license. They don't really need to know it, but they still have to see it, right? Whereas in this model, using zero knowledge proofs, you can just prove, you're like, hey, I'm over 21. And based on the cryptography underlying it, the bouncer can be convinced of just by simply seeing that proof that it's true. So I think identity is another really big application.
Yeah, I think identity is like, what about like outside just identity? What about like titles or like a health record that you can take with you anywhere, but keep it private at the same time? I think there's a lot of potential applications that need that privacy aspect, but still need blockchain so that it has that universal trait to it.
Totally. Yeah. Like private medical records, I think is absolutely an application. I kind of view that as a subset, or like, if you solve the identity problem, you can kind of solve that problem too, because you need an identity to be tied to these records. And that's kind of the big thing that you don't want to reveal. But yeah, no, I think there's a lot of interesting applications. One actually application that's kind of, most people don't think about that I think is really cool is gaming. I don't know. Have you ever played Dark Forest?
No, I've played games, but I haven't played that one.
Okay, so Dark Forest, anybody who's listening, by the way, should check this out. It's a game on Ethereum. It's basically kind of like a strategy game, and it's kind of set inside of like the universe, or set in kind of like this galaxy setting. And the goal of the game is to like take over planets and accumulate as much like materials and wealth, kind of like a StarCraft type thing, but maybe a little bit more low tech. And the cool thing about it is it all runs on the Ethereum blockchain. And so plays, or a layer 2, I think, built on top. But, everybody's playing and there's no central server that's kind of managing what people see, right? And it, it's kind of like, you're like, okay, well, that's fine. People play StarCraft and like, it's, it works fine. But like this model just gives you, it's never been before possible to play a multiplayer hidden information game where something that I don't know and I know something in a decentralized way, right? If you do it just on Ethereum without zero knowledge proofs, like I can see everything that you have and you can see everything that I have. And it's kind of like takes away from the fun of the game. But the zero knowledge proofs kind of enable you to do this in a decentralized setting. And why is that cool? Is because these games can exist like completely outside of, like, let's say StarCraft, like it's completely outside of Blizzard's control, right? Like players can fork the game, make their own rules, and like have their own like kind of this own like set of things. You can build all these, you can write all these scripts and tools to do fun things on the side. And like just opens it up. It makes it a sandbox, and I think it opens the door to like so much more creativity. And again, I think the zero knowledge proof aspect is important, is because again, having the ability to like have a game where the mechanic is like you don't know everything about what everyone else is doing, I think is really, really kind of powerful. So I actually think there's some really cool applications for zero knowledge proofs in gaming as well.
Yeah, I've considered it before too. It'd be really cool if you could like clone GTA and apply blockchain and ZK or something like that, and then you could just run around and rob everyone of their bitcoins.
Yeah, right. And like, or do anything. It's like it becomes like a totally open sandbox. It's kind of like the world of like Linux, right? Like Linux, there's like a million varieties of Linux, and people take what they like and do other stuff. And like, that's cool. It's awesome. It's one of the reasons why Linux has evolved to become like the foundation of like the modern web, in a sense that all the most servers run it. And I think it's just because of its openness and the ability for anybody to take and tweak. And that's cool. That's the cool thing about blockchains in general and decentralized applications as opposed to centralized ones. So
yeah, isn't it crazy how the gaming industry has gotten so big in his, I feel like in a lot of ways has almost pushed blockchain and crypto far more than most other industries too. And you see all kinds of different things being developed, even in metaverse stuff and, VR and AR. I just feel like that blockchain and that kind of stuff and gaming are just like the perfect like combo. They really drive each other like crazy. I think those will be some of the biggest use cases in the next couple of years.
Oh, definitely, especially with stuff like, non-fungible tokens becoming more and more mainstream. It's funny. I mean, when I was a brand new analyst at GGV Capital 4 years ago, we kind of talked about this. And I have friends from that time who are in crypto now still. And like, we kind of joke about like, we always said gaming was going to be like, and NFTs were going to be like a big use case, like the digital sword you could trade or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. And now it's, for so long, it kind of wasn't a thing, but then it suddenly became a thing overnight. And that's actually gets me, it's like, one other aspect that zero knowledge proofs and Aleo, I think, one thing that it can enable is more scalability in those transactions. I think if the Ethereum blockchain, obviously, but others too have kind of struggled under the load of a lot of these NFT transactions because they happen pretty frequently and it's kind of expensive to transfer and mint stuff. And one advantage of using snarks or zero knowledge proofs as kind of the basis of your transaction model is you can batch a lot of transactions together at once in a way that gets you a much higher TPS. I mean, it's the same idea as like ZK rollup on Ethereum, except in our case, you get that for free. And also you kind of get this privacy layer on top, which just vanilla ZK rollup doesn't give you. But I think that scalability, I think, is directly applicable to some NFT or to the NFT space. And it's something that we're actually actively working on ourselves, enabling a proof of concept to show that.
Yeah, if they could just NFT all the accessories and attachments and add-ons you get into games, that would open up marketplaces like crazy and be able to like play COD, for example, and get like a certain like set of skins or attachments for your weapons or your character, and then be able to have that carry across all the COD games whenever you want, or NFT the ray gun when you're playing Call of Duty Zombies so that you can get that at any point in time. I don't know. There's a lot of cool things they could potentially do.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm just like shocked. Like it's not done yet. Like people will go crazy for that stuff.
Yeah, like think about you're playing zombies or something on COD, and then like your buddy rolls in with like a minigun he got from Doom or something like that.
Tosses you an NFT.
Oh my god, yeah. Or like some like I don't know, some gun from Fortnite, and like it there's so many cool potential ways to recombine it. Yeah, and I think so. I think the gaming space. I mean, I love the video game industry. I've been a gamer my whole life, but I think there's a really, really cool potential with blockchains and NFTs and gaming.
Absolutely. How can people that are developers, get started with Aleo? Where can they go to figure out how to do this and get involved and start building things?
Yeah. So, like I said, one of the goals of our project is to make it really accessible. And so like we've created some of these tools to kind of help people get a taste of what you can do. So we have an online IDE or interactive development environment that I can give you the link to. You can post in the show notes if you want. It's leolang.org. And you can go there, and it kind of opens up this little editor for you and gives you some kind of code examples for potential little toy applications where you can write the application or edit the application right there, and then compile it into basically a proof format, and then you kind of get a sense, get a feel for like what it's like to write a zero knowledge powered application, right? So that's the easiest way. Our website aleo.org also has a bunch of content around like, hey, why does this matter? What's kind of like the underlying ideas here, and then of course, like for people who are really going to get deeper into it and want to go deeper. We have a Discord server, where there's a very passionate community of people who are into this stuff who, participate in discussions or, submit ideas for different applications. We have a grants program for developers who, really want to, try their hand at building something that people might actually use. And, we funded, I think 2, but, we have, I think up to 10 applications that we're considering right now funding. So it's a great way. I think one of the best ways to learn is by doing. And so that's, that's definitely another way. So yeah, those are the ways that I would consider, kind of for folks who don't know anything about Aleo to learn more. Is leolang.org and then aleo.org. You go there and it takes you to wherever you need to go. If you know nothing about zero knowledge proofs, though, I would say the best place to start is my good friend Anna Rose runs this incredible podcast called the Zero Knowledge Podcast, and it's a great show. For anyone who doesn't have background on zero knowledge cryptography, I highly recommend it.
Cool. Yeah, shoot me some links after the episode, and I'll put them in the description below so people can find it and go check all that stuff out. Anyways, Alex, thank you for taking the time to come on and talk about Aleo and all the stuff we talked about, zero knowledge proofs, gaming, blockchain, whatever. Really appreciate it. Good conversation. Hopefully talk to you again in the future too.
Yeah. Hey, Brandon, really appreciate the opportunity and thank you very much. And yeah, hope we get to chat again sometime soon.
Absolutely. Take care.
Take care.